Welcome, everyone. I'm happy to welcome today Horia, who's UpStack's VP of Sales. And today's session is all about how to grow your sales team. So for all early stage companies out there who are looking to find the balance of not only hiring the right people, but also making sure that they consistently reach their sales goals, today Horia will be going over what he has learned on achieving success as UpStack's sales leader and how to grow a top-notch team from the ground up. Thank you so much for being here, Horia. Happy to welcome you.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Thanks for the invite. Thanks for setting this up. Why don't I just get into it and share a bit about my experience, share a bit about what I've learned over the past years, and most importantly, share what has worked for us really well, especially over this year. So something extremely up to date with the latest industry standards, if I can say so. The number one thing that I focus on when thinking of expanding the team is the actual culture. Culture is something that not a lot of companies actually look at deep down and understand what it is that, it defines their company. And then you kind of have to mirror that in the individual team as well. I always find that if there's one thing you can't coach or you can't change in a person, that is their culture. If from day one, they're not, someone that can easily blend in with everyone else and feel like they're home, it's not necessarily going to work out in the end. You're going to be able to have extremely high performing individuals, but if they're not part of the same culture, they're not going to have a lengthy stay in the team. So I probably look at culture first and really try to understand what it is that we want to breathe at UpStack, what it is that we want to achieve. The second aspect, and this is probably very debatable, is do you hire for skills or do you hire for passion? And this is a question I get asked a lot, including internally. So it's something that even our CEO has asked me a couple of times. What do you want to be hiring? Who do you want to bring on? Do you want to bring on someone who's got all the skills that we need? Or are we going to be bringing in someone that matches our passion and is ready to overcome any challenges and any obstacles? And I think you need to find a good balance. Being an early stage startup, I think skill is extremely important. You need to find the people that are going to hit the ground running and that are going to get you those quick wins. You can start generating revenue and you can start thinking about, actually growing the team. But once you've gotten in the habit of already performing at a certain level, passion comes into the equation as well. A lot of salespeople, in my opinion, need to be passionate about their work. Sales is not just about numbers. It's not just about making money. It's about being able to relate to a person's problems and being able to help, offer them a solution, offer them a way to grow and achieve their goals. So in my opinion, the perfect balance between skills and passion will never be found. And if I were to put my finger on it, I'd go for the passion person over the skilled person, because skill is something that you can always learn. And the passionate person will have the grit and the desire to grow their skill set. Whilst on the other side, if someone's extremely skilled, but they don't necessarily have the passion for it, that's not something you can easily ignite if it's not there from the beginning.
I agree.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I think the whole UpStack team is pretty passionate.
Exactly. And I think that's part of our culture. We look for like-minded individuals. Being remote from day one has emulated into our lives, and it helps by not knowing that, hey, I'm at my 9 to 5 and then I can just bugger off and do whatever I want. We're passionate about the work that we do. We don't limit time box it in any way. If I need to be flexible, I can be flexible. And the passion I put into my work when I'm at work is very visible. I think whoever knows me or whoever worked with me can attest to this one thing alone. my passion. Moving on, another very important aspect in the actual growth process of your sales team is the expectation setting aspect. Setting clear expectations will enable both the employer as well as the employee to have a clear roadmap of what they need to achieve in order for success to be clearly defined. If there's not a clear set of expectations, you're never going to know if you as an employee are performing at the level that's required, and you as an employer are not necessarily going to be in a position to quantify the outcome of that hire. You've hired 5 people, you haven't set any expectations, and then 6 months go by and you maybe have 10 new clients. Is that good enough? Does that keep the engines going? Was that, not expected? And that's the kind of question that you need to ask yourself. And I've been in that position. Have I made my expectations clear? And that's what I've definitely learned along the way, is that from day one, we need to share the expectations, and the people that are going to be coming along are going to have their expectations. The perfect mix is you being able to share your expectations, them being able to share their expectations, and then find that sweet spot where everything is kind of on the same page, on the same wavelength, and everyone can easily come in, join the culture, share their passion, and smash their goals. I think that's what it all comes down with at the end. Now, moving to the second slide, the final 3 points, and all of them are taken from my own personal book and not from something I've necessarily read online or in a book. This is what I've came to realize after being in the industry for a couple of years now. Point number 4, empowering people, empowering the people that you grow your team with. As a sales leader, my responsibility is not to do everything. And it's wrong of me to assume that I need to do everything. I sometimes enjoy doing everything, but I do get that feeling of being sometimes spread too thin. And I'm doing a bit of too much and not being able to focus on actually growth alone. That's why empowering the people that you work with, your colleagues, enabling them to actually do what needs to be done in a very focused manner is going to help the team grow, the company achieve their goals, and you as a sales leader be able to step down, zoom out, and see the overall picture. Understand how everyone is contributing individually towards the overarching goals of this quarter, of the year, the company, and subsequently reaching their personal targets as well. Along the way, there comes a time when you need to start looking at results. Obviously, results are what matter at the end of the day. Monitoring those results, understanding what each individual team member is doing, and looking at these results from different angles is going to help you make decisions. It's going to help you understand whether or not someone is performing at their best level, what they could be doing to improving that, what you as a leader can do to help them take their performance, their game to the next step. And then finally, being able to share that feedback with them in a constructive manner. And I want to make a small parenthesis here. Not everyone can take feedback. And I've learned that from myself. I was not necessarily someone, maybe 3-4 years ago, maybe a bit longer. I wasn't necessarily someone who took feedback very easily, because when you work with passion, you automatically assume, I think that's just how we human beings are programmed. You assume that you're doing your best. And when you get feedback that's not necessarily in line with your expectations, you might take it a bit personally. Me, I'm Latin, I come from a Latin background. So obviously every single thing that I put passion in has a flame attached to it. It has that fire that ignites, and you might take feedback the wrong way. So that's why sharing feedback every time, continuously, ongoingly, not stopping sharing feedback is number one, is key to growing and to enabling growth within you personally and then with your team as well. But also finding a way that you make sure everyone understands feedback is an important aspect and maybe the most important aspect in growing. So I think that was overall how I kind of see the growth aspect of a sales team. It's not rocket science. It shouldn't be something complicated. I know that there's a lot we could possibly go on and discussing, but I do wanna bring up one point before I take a couple of questions. And my favorite quote in terms of managing a team is the following: talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence win championships. And whenever I remind myself of that, I can easily take out the individual contributor away from the team and just look at the entire unit, how it's performing. Because you can have fantastic individual contributors, but the team is not performing at its best and the company is suffering. We're approaching the end of 2022. We've got LeBron James, fantastic player, smashing all the records, but the Lakers aren't doing so well. I think that's prime example. I come from a sports background. Obviously, an analogy with sports had to be made. Apologies there. But at the end of the day, what matters is not every single game, but the power and the emotional intelligence to end up winning the championship. Every game needs to be treated with the respect that it requires. By game, I mean every single workday that we put in. But at the end of the year, you need to kind of look back and see, did you actually achieve the goals that you set out in the previous year? So that was it. A short presentation from me. Nicole, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That was very valuable. And I'm not even a sports person, but I love that analogy because it's so true that teamwork really is what matters at the end of the day, no matter how skilled one individual is. So I really appreciated that. And I feel like your expertise can really lend to helping other leaders kind of like spot the biggest learnings in their new team, whether it's like a founder who's never hired for a sales team before or anything. I feel like they could get a lot of value from this. So I appreciate that. One question I had is, I'm sure you've interviewed probably countless candidates when you're interviewing for new sales positions. What is a common mistake that you've seen new applicants make that they can avoid for the future?
Good question. I like it. And it's a good time to ask the question because I've just finished a round of interviews. I think I've met with about 50 people. I've probably reviewed close to 1,000 resumes before meeting with these 50 people. So I'm pretty up to date with what mistakes I've seen over the past weeks. Mm-hmm. And one thing that resonates with this statement is most people try to focus on their past. Mm-hmm. The past or what you've achieved got you to this point. Mm-hmm. What you do in the future and what you want to achieve in the future is what you should be focusing on, because nobody's going to be hiring you necessarily for what you've done, but what you can bring to the table. Of course, the past has its own implications and it forms the package that you bring to the table. Mm-hmm. But what you're about and what you want to be learning and growing, developing is what people usually end up looking for. That's what we look at. What is it that you want to be learning? New skills. What do you want to be improving? How willing are you to reach your personal goals? How willing are you to understand the company's goals and work towards achieving that? Applicants tend to be anxious on interviews, and that's normal. That's perfectly normal. I think everyone is anxious whenever they meet with someone new for the first time. But in my opinion, that should be the case for the first part of the call. Afterwards, it's the interviewer's job to make sure that the applicant feels comfortable and feels like he's part of, a place where it's safe for him to actually express his feelings, his thoughts. Rarely nowadays do you hire someone for their CV or their past jobs. You hire them for their mindset, their attitude, and their willingness to exceed their own expectations.
I love that. So I think for new applicants or anyone who wants to apply to UpStack in the future, definitely being future oriented is very important, and making sure you align with the company's goals and values. Love that. Awesome. And then speaking of past learnings and how they influence the future, has there ever been like a mistake or a problem that you've dealt with in your sales career that you took those learnings into what you do now at UpStack?
Oh, yes. I was actually quite famous for rushing into things. I was genuinely famous for that. Having that desire to win and that passion for getting it done sometimes meant me seeing an email, a message, and wanting to reply instantly. But when you're not used to this ecosystem, it could be the case, and that was the case with me. I got very emotional when things didn't go my way, which is probably normal. You know, again, I come from a Latin background. Things tend to get heated. But what I learned and what I understood is that business is business, and emotions play an important role. Maybe the most important role when closing a deal is the way you handle your emotions. Every single message, email, any kind of correspondence, any type of communication, I try to take a step back, let it sink in, read it with a few different lenses on, try to look at it from different angles, and understand that the reply which I'm about to give can either help me or harm me. What path do I want to be choosing? It can be hard knowing exactly what you should be replying, but that's where the experience comes into place. And that's where everything that you've done up until that point will help you. It's extremely important to have a stable emotional intelligence. At the end of the day, smart people are easily found everywhere. Let's take software engineers, for instance. Okay, software engineers are extremely smart individuals, but sometimes the way they tend to take things, tend to respond to emotions, makes you wonder, are they even human sometimes? They are super focused on software and emotions sometimes don't find their way into software. And that's normal. But we as salespeople, emotions is the emotional aspect of our job is all, and it has a lot of implications. So yes, that was my biggest mistake. I've learned from it. I still have a really good response time, so I aim to get back quickly, but I take a step back, I drink a bit of water, make sure I cool myself down, I analyze the situation, and then I try to see how I can provide value with my next response.
Got it. That's amazing advice. And I know, at least like for a lot of women out there who apply to positions, a lot of people, and I just noticed this with women especially, don't even apply for a job unless they meet 100% of the requirements. And so that can sometimes prevent really quality, good people from applying to certain positions, especially if they want to get into sales. So what would you say would be like the top 3 requirements that you would look for in a new sales hire, that if they have this, even if they came from a completely different industry or don't have a college degree or anything like that, if they have these requirements, those signal to you that they would be a good addition to the team?
Okay, good question. Let me think about it for a second. So I definitely have 3 things in mind, and they're not necessarily going to go in a certain order. So it can be 1, 2, 3, it can be 3, 2, 1. I haven't made up my mind yet, but let's start off with mindset and attitude. And what I mean by that is their ambition and their drive to win. As salespeople, it's absolutely fundamental that you want to win. And you have the ambition to wake up every day, every morning, and want to get it done. So that's number 1. Number 2, and this is something that could potentially apply to the remote sector, and that's because we operate in the remote sector, but time management is very important. It gives everyone great flexibility, that the home office aspect, the completely remote part of our job means that we're not in an office 9 to 5 and we need to make phone calls between 9 and 11. We need to send emails between that and that. So that box, which some office employees are boxed into, goes away. I want to see people, and I want to see especially my colleagues, thrive during their personal as well as professional lives. But that means having a fantastic time management ability, knowing when you're most productive and knowing when you can get the most done, effective, efficient, in the least amount of time. So that would be number 2. And finally, and again, this could be number 1, but being a team player. I've mentioned this in the presentation as well. I mentioned this a few times throughout my speeches and throughout my podcasts, but wanting to be a team player, having that ability, understanding that there is no I in team. Sure, there's an I in win, but great teams win championships, exactly like in the quote. And that's what we aim to do. So being a team player is key. If someone has these 3 qualities, and no matter what background they come from, no matter where they live, no matter what they're currently doing, and they're looking for a change, feel free to apply. Hit me up with a DM on LinkedIn or wherever you want. I'm more than happy to have a conversation.
Amazing. Awesome. That's also refreshing for people that maybe get hang up on the vanity requirements, but they don't realize that these are the essentials of what makes a good salesperson. Awesome. And then I know you've been in sales for quite a while. So what would you say would be a sales secret of the industry that not many people know about? I know you can't give away all your secrets, but if you can think of one that you learned that would be beneficial for others to know.
If I could think of something, and I've shared this with a lot of people that I meet, this is my I'm not going to call it secret, because for me it's something obvious, but this is what works for me. And I don't think that there's any shortcuts in life. I don't think that there's ever a situation where you can just, take the back door and find that magic potion or that magic phrase that's going to get you all those sales in. I genuinely believe that being a person that cares about their clients is going to get you more than trying to look for secrets or for shortcuts. People buy from people. I will always say that hard work beats everything, because that's just who I am. And people that know me know that I'm a hardworking individual. That's just how I forged myself over the past years. But the reality is that no matter how hard you work, if you're not being smart and empathic towards your clients, you're not going to make a difference. Emotional intelligence can overcome high IQ when it comes to sales. This and following up with prospects relentlessly. My biggest deal so far was closed at 6 a.m. on a Sunday via WhatsApp. Just let that sink in. I'm not saying wake up at 6 a.m. and start messaging people, but being proactive, following your gut instinct and following that, inner self that's telling you do it now, that could be the key differentiator to winning on that specific day.
Kind of interesting. And one of my last questions is, I know during the pandemic, a lot of businesses switched or transitioned from in-office to a remote environment. And also a lot of new businesses now are starting off in a new remote setting. So in your experience, how has it been different between growing a sales team or hiring a sales team from an in-office environment versus remote? What are the key differences?
Okay, good question. And I get this asked a lot on discovery calls with potential clients as well. They usually ask me, what is it like having people in office as opposed to people fully remote? And I'm going to answer this question not necessarily from a sales perspective, but from any remote role. And I'm going to say that trust is the most important aspect. when salespeople, for instance, are in office, they they tend to form their wolf packs, get on the phone together, pump themselves up, hype themselves up, start maybe talking about the deals that they've been closing, kind of motivating each other through that ego that sometimes salespeople develop. And you can genuinely see it in an office, like you actually see them being there, winning. In a remote settings, in a remote setting, it's the manager's job to ensure that the virtual wolf pack is alive. Everyone feels part of it. Everyone feels pumped. Everyone feels motivated to do the exact same thing and to not feel like, you know, they're being pushed aside or left aside. No, they're still part of a team that wants to win, that helps each and every single individual grow. In the end, it comes down on the individual to make it worth his time. The manager plays an important role. But at the end, trust is the biggest differentiator. It's not the number of phone calls that they had or the numbers of emails that they've sent, the number of prospects that they've gone through trying to find. So all those metrics are easily left aside. The manager needs to trust his key players and all the players for that, you know, for the sake of the argument, that they're doing the best. It's about the mindset of wanting to get it no matter what.
So trust is key at the end of the day.
Always.
Amazing. That is all the questions I had today, but thank you, Horia, for all of your expertise. I learned so much, and I feel like this would be really valuable to other sales leaders out there. So thank you again so much, and we will see all of you on the UpStack YouTube channel. And thank you again. Have a great day.
Thanks, Nicole.